Team, aspiring independent sponsors frequently reach out to ask how they can have company control of a business they acquire if they didn't individually invest the equity capital required for voting control. Now, as it relates to corporate governance, equity ownership is often associated with control, but private equity transactions can be structured to provide an independent sponsor with full control of a business, regardless of the amount of capital contributed. And in this video, we're going to explain precisely how that works. So let's look at an acquisition structure. In this structure, on the left, you have the independent sponsor, and on the right, you have investors. In a private equity transaction, control is determined via a partnership agreement, which can be structured as either a limited liability company or a limited partnership. For the purpose of this post, we will use an LLC because it is a common approach for independent sponsors. This LLC will serve as the investment vehicle for the deal, and the associated LLC operating agreement will govern how the independent sponsor and investors work together. So what is an LLC operating agreement? The LLC operating agreement outlines in detail how the members will interact to guide the financial and operational objectives of the LLC. LLC operating agreements can vary from one transaction to the next, so in this video, we're only going to reference the language specific to control and voting rights. So let's address independent sponsor company control. Absent a majority equity stake, gaining control of the business requires gaining control of the board and structuring the LLC as a manager-managed LLC. In other words, a board-managed LLC. Let's take a look at some hypothetical language by way of example. In an LLC operating agreement, under the article Management, you will find a section titled Authority. As a quick aside, the X's in brackets are simply placeholders. So let's look at some of this language. Under Authority, we have, except as otherwise expressly provided herein, the board shall conduct, direct, and exercise full control over all activities of the LLC. All management powers over the business and affairs of the LLC shall be exclusively vested in the board, and the board shall have the sole power to bind or take any action on behalf of the LLC, or to exercise any rights and powers granted to the LLC under this agreement, or any other agreement, instrument, or other document to which the LLC is a party. No manager shall have the authority to bind the LLC unless the board has granted such authority to such manager. Now, per the example LLC operating agreement language, this article puts control of the LLC in the hands of the board. With this structure, the non-managing members do not have a say in the management of the business, but they remain entitled to their economics via their respective membership interests. Because LLCs are based on contracts, you can draft the contract so that the managing member has control even though he or she does not own a majority of the LLC. Now, the section that follows authority of the board in the LLC agreement will list the active board members of the LLC, describe how long each board member can serve, and detail how vacancies are filled, among other things. The voting rights of the members are then directly addressed in a separate article. Under provisions relating to members, we have a section titled No Other Voting Rights, which reads, except as otherwise expressly provided in this agreement, no member shall have any voting rights or rights of approval, consent or veto or similar rights over any actions of the company. Generally, members do not have management authority unless the LLC operating agreement grants them that authority. Now, as a final comment, all of this depends on an independent sponsor's investor base, and this is hugely important. Achieving board control may require negotiating with investors. If the independent sponsor partners with a private equity firm to fund the transaction, it may make this difficult as most private equity firms will want to control the LLC. However, if the independent sponsor can raise capital from a fragmented investor base, it may make the negotiations easier. Throughout my career, I have always heard talented private equity managers speak to the importance of training your LP base. If you can raise capital from the right group of investors and set clear expectations early in your career as an independent sponsor, it will make all subsequent transactions much easier to negotiate. All right, team, that's all for now. Thanks for watching.